Okay, good evening. This is the working session for the Owen J. Roberts School District. The Owen J. Roberts School District Board of Directors utilizes these working sessions as a way to consider agenda items as one large committee for the purpose of discussion and debate in full view of the public. Time permitting, the committee chairperson may open the meeting up for public questions rather, on items being discussed by the committee at this time. First up is number 2.0, school start time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. John. So we'd like to do just a brief presentation tonight, but as many of you know, we sent out a communication to our families on Friday and to our school community on Friday. And changing the school start times is something that we're not going to pursue next school year. I do want to start by thanking the committee. We had a committee that met several times, did a lot of work, really helped us through the process, but in the end, from the letter that you saw from me, due to the transportation struggles that we're having, we just were not able to, or I was not able to make a recommendation to move our start times that would add additional bus routes when we're currently short-staffed with busing right now. But just a brief overview, and again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this tonight. We have a comprehensive school start time website that we will continue to keep on our webpage so folks can look at it to see the work that we have done. Both previously, in the previous iterations when we were looking at this topic, and then with our school start time committee in the last several months. So Frank, if you can go to the first slide for me. So again, just an overview, and as I've shared publicly, this was school start time version 3.0, because as a district we've looked at it several times. But I do believe this time we spent the most time and most comprehensive time, most comprehensive approach looking at school start times. But you can see the previous work that we've done here. 2017 was the first iteration, and then in 2019 there was some more work done on it. There were also surveys given both of those times as well. We have information on our website regarding the costs for that. And then all the community meetings were on there as well. Just some overviews. Again, I would encourage anyone that has an interest in this topic to look at our school start time website. There's a lot of good information on there. The TED Talk with Wendy Troxel, Dr. Wendy Troxel, is outstanding. We also have the recommendations from the CDC and the National Sleep Foundation. What I refer people to a lot is that Joint State Government Commission. That was a report that was done in 2019, a bipartisan report that was done just prior to COVID, when there was a lot of momentum for this, and then things were put on hold when COVID came throughout the nation, throughout the world. But there's a lot of good information in that report and a very comprehensive question and answer document for how to resolve some of the problems that come up. And then also the Chester County Intermediate Unit did some work with students, and there's a handover report on our school start time website as well. So next slide, Frank. So the committee work, you can see on here, we had 2 committee meetings, September 22nd and October 10th, to get feedback from the committee. We had our community forum at the middle school, where we had, I think, about 60 people that showed up, and that was specifically on school start time, where we were able to share information. We had 2 superintendents from other districts that have done it, and then we also answered questions that community members had. We've had 2 town hall meetings, and this has been a popular topic at those town hall meetings on November 1st and 7th, and then, of course, we've received, both myself and board members have received, a lot of emails and a lot of correspondence on both sides of this issue regarding later school start times. The OJR school start time website, again, a couple things also that I want to highlight. Everything that we have done is on there, but the one thing that I do want to highlight on here is the Q&A document that we put together. And again, the school start time committee was very helpful in that. But basically, the approach that we took was to find all the questions that people had in the community and provide answers to those questions. So please take a look at that. I think we were able to handle or answer most of the questions that came through. but the one variable that we just did not have a solution for at this time, nor in the immediate future, is the transportation and getting additional bus drivers. So next slide, please. So the benefits, very clear in the sleep science and in the research regarding the benefits of having a late start for secondary students, increased subject matter retention and student academic performance, improved student mental and physical health, and then the positive benefits for behavior and safety. So again, that is all well steeped or well documented in the research. The challenges, the transportation I mentioned, one of the options that we were looking at, and I'll talk about a little bit later, is that flipped option, which would have had elementary start earlier than secondary and then secondary start later. One of the things that we heard about that was childcare, if the elementary kids were home earlier in the afternoon. And then we've also heard regarding athletics. The one thing I do want to share about athletics is currently it's a problem. We have students, whenever they have an away competition, that are leaving several hours beforehand for their athletic events, so that our buses can get back for their regular runs. But the one thing that I will say is, even though students have to leave extremely early, and we're working on that, it has not decreased our participation. So if we are to look at any type of change in the future, I know one of the concerns is students missing class time. We would certainly have a proposal that they're not missing any more than they're currently missing, because they are missing quite a bit of time right now. The options that we had, I mentioned the flip option, and then the other option that we had was to push everything back a little later. One of the things that we're really going to focus on with transportation, right now, the run times between our elementary and secondary runs are an hour in length. And if there's a way that we can get more efficient in our bus runs and cut that down to 45 minutes or so, that would be helpful for us. Just any type of change that we could make, if we could make those run times, lessen them from an hour to less. So we had the flip options I talked about, and then we also had a push option where everything would have started later. So next slide, please, Frank. So our focus all along was, with our committee, was to provide solutions. You know, what I've found in my work throughout the years is a lot of times there are problem admirers that are out there, and I typically don't like to function as a problem admirer. I think it's important to identify the problems and find solutions. So that was the goal from our school start time from the onset, and I think the committee did a really nice job of finding those solutions. So the considerations: can we hire enough bus drivers? And I mentioned this before, the child care coverage, and then the athletic opportunities, and then some of the other factors that we were looking at as well. So Frank, next slide, please. So conclusions, you know, as a superintendent, and I've shared this publicly, as a superintendent, as a school administrator, and as a parent of a student in another district that had a school start time, I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen the benefits of it with my own child, you know, as a parent, with having that late start time. So it's something that, if you look at the research, and you look at the science, and I look at my own experiences with my own child and as an administrator in a school district that did it, I see a lot of value and a lot of merit in it. And it's something that, you know, if we're able to deliver on it in the future, I certainly would like to look at it again. Community opinion is split on this, and we've been very candid about the community input that we get, and it's about 50-50. I have about half the folks saying it's about time, you should be doing this. Look at the research, and we have the other half in the community that are saying, don't do anything differently. Why would we change it? So this is something that we would never get consensus on. It's something that folks are divided on. Mentioned the bus driver shortage. We just can't ignore that. Any proposed school start time would require 5 to 7 additional buses, and we've talked about that quite a bit. Again, we invested valuable time and resources into changing the times, but without first having a solution for the driver shortages, it would be irresponsible of me as a superintendent and of our district to move in this direction without solving that problem. So next slide. So again, just to reiterate, this was in my letter. So my recommendation is that we keep things as is for next school year. So there will be no change to the start times for next school year. If we do get to the point in the future where we can address the transportation, and we're not waiting to next year to try and address transportation, we're looking at solutions for that now. But if we do get to the point where we've worked out transportation, this is something that I would like to investigate or reevaluate in the future. And again, but I just want to reiterate that magically, if transportation worked out in the next month, which I don't see that solution, we're not going to change anything for next school year. So I want it well known that for next school year, our schedule will be the same. And next slide, please. So next steps, I have them listed up here. We're trying to prioritize the busing shortage. You can see this. The only other thing I want to mention is that in January, I will be bringing a doctor to our board meeting from Geisinger University. They have a program called Wake Up and Learn through Geisinger that I would like our district to engage in. And essentially what it is, and again, I don't want to steal her thunder, she will give a presentation to the board in a working session in January, but it would be an opportunity for our students and our parents to engage in a survey through Geisinger and take a look at sleep habits of the children, and then based off of those responses, families would get a recommendation to maybe help them with what they could do differently with their sleep. So again, if this is the direction that we go, like any survey that we give, this would be totally optional, but I do think that this would give some valuable information to families and to students in the interim regarding, proper sleep habits or getting proper sleep. And as a school district too, it would give us some additional data to look at in the future. So again, that'll be coming in a later date in January. I'd like to do that presentation, but I think that will be a nice stopgap to help families and students who may not be getting enough sleep at this time. So without further ado, that's the information and my recommendation. Are there any questions for me?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say something, if that's okay. Obviously, I'm disappointed in this because, this has been the thing that I really feel is the right thing for our students. I've been saying this for a very long time. But I understand the problems, and I understand also that we're in a difficult environment right now as far as just, all this, the buses, the finances, and all that. But the one thing I just wanted to say is we've been getting a lot of emails from people asking a lot of questions, and some of them are very lengthy and thought out emails. But the thing about it is a lot of the answers to those questions are in that Joint State Government Commission report. There's been a lot of research done. People were asking questions about, well, did you study this? Did you study that? And the truth of it is studies are very expensive to do. I don't know which of the districts it was that employed, a university to do all the studying on this kids' sleep habits and the before and afters and all these things. Scientific studies are not cheap. And so for us to try to recreate a study that's already been done or, done multiple times, I don't think is responsible. So I appreciate everyone's, interest in the topic and thinking that we should get the best information possible. But I think that if they really read through that Joint State Commission report and went even through some of the links that are in there, they would see all this research has been done. We don't need to continue to reinvent the wheel. And that's why we did our committee the way we did. That we talked about, this is something that let's assume we're going to do it, and let's try to find solutions for people with the logistical challenges, because the research has already been done. So I just wanted to put that out there because I'm hoping that in the near future, whenever the bus thing, gets a little more manageable, that we'll be able to revisit this and make a proposal. And when we do that, I would really love it if our community isn't coming out in full force saying, wait a minute, I thought we put this to bed, we're not doing it, and asking all those same questions all over. All that information is there for them to read and be prepared and to have, and ask additional questions along the way, So I just hope that everyone will take the time to read that.
Just to piggyback off what Kathy said, I feel like I'm not really thrilled that we seem to be kicking the can down the road on this issue again. If we wanted to make a change, I would prefer we have just taken a vote on it with the caveat that this would be implemented when the bus situation was worked out. Otherwise, let's just put it to bed, because I think we just need to make a decision on it. This seems like we're just going to keep dragging this out.
That's an interesting point. I didn't think about that, but that is the fact, because now, if you're just kicking it down to another time, then it's open-ended. If the community knows that this is something we will do when this transportation thing is worked out, then they might start making preparations. Yeah. So something to consider.
So if we work this out, and that's a good point, Dan. You know, we've done a lot of the work, you know, bringing the school start time committee. We've done a lot of the work and got the input and got information. So I've been very candid and open that this is something that I see a lot of value with, that I would like to move forward. But I'm just, for the reasons I stated above, I'm not comfortable doing it at this time. I mean, that could have been one approach to say when we can do it, you know, we would do it and take a board vote on it. But I don't know if we'll have a solution for it next year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So I didn't want to bring it for a vote at this time until it's something that I think we can deliver on.
Will, I think in your next steps, I think I'd appreciate it, you know, and I guess this is just a presentation, but
Sure.
I would have appreciated seeing like more of a stake in the ground for next year of like, you know, next September, we're going to reconvene and we're going to, you know, something not just like, we're not doing it now, we may do it in the future. Yeah. I you know, agreeing with Kathy and Dan, I think we need to, you know, say we're going to seriously and honestly look at it next year if we can't do it now.
Yeah, I mean, once we have a solution for the transportation, we would do that. I do like the timetable that we were on. I think it's important that any change that we make, that we're bringing it to the board around this time and getting it approved around this time, because then folks have 8 or 9 months to prepare. So like I said, if miraculously there was a change in transportation, I would not be comfortable bringing it in February or March. So I think this is something that we'll look at in the fall. And if we see that we have a solution with transportation, then we would go through. We don't have to start from scratch. We've done a lot of the work, but then a recommendation could be forthcoming. But again, we'll communicate all that information.
Well, but one of the drawbacks of having this conversation in November of next year would be the timing with elections. Because right now, this November, we don't have any seats up for office. You know, so for sitting board members, it's not a reelection issue right now. But next year, the entire community would view it as a reelection issue, whether we wanted to make it so or not. So I do think that we should take that into account, given the public's reaction to how things go when people are up for reelection.
You know, besides transportation, there are other issues. Should we have the committee, you know, still meet on occasion in, you know, 6 months, just to kind of keep the, you know, the discussion alive and kind of investigate into, you know, childcare and other things?
Maybe the committee could reconvene as a part of that doctor that's coming to visit.
Sure.
And make sure that the committee is there, or, you know, engaged in that discussion as well, so that the topic is still being looked at and additional information that has come to us can be discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to start from scratch like everybody says a fourth time, you know? Yeah. So if we keep the thing moving a little bit, even if it's just on simmer.
Yeah, keep the committee intact as much as possible.
I think I'd also like to have a better understanding of what a solution is for transportation. What is that? What are we defining as what do we need in order to move forward? Is it 100% of every, you know, because we always have some amount under, we may always now have some amount under. What are we looking for as what is that, you know, what's the basis for making this change? What do we consider to be solved at this point? Because solved may not be the same as pre-pandemic.
Correct. And I know we're looking at that every day. On a typical day, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you get more updates on this, that we're probably 6 to 8 drivers short on a typical day. Again, we'd be looking at 5 to 7 buses, additional buses that we would need for the non-public runs to add this. So in our current state, we would be putting ourselves into a position where we were a dozen drivers short every day. We could not deliver on that. So, you know, if we're at 100% next year, you know, to start the school year, is that enough that we could look to add other buses for the following year? Probably, but we're severely short right now.
I think the only thing I would like to add, just for informational purposes, pre-COVID, we had 10 to 12 sub-drivers on deck and a full staff. So we may not get there again, you're right, but if we even had just 100% of our drivers, it would be much better.
I know that I don't really understand the whole labor market and all that, but as far as bus drivers are concerned, I know there's signing bonuses, there's all kinds of different strategies to try to get more bus drivers. But are we able to do anything in our budgeting to make it more attractive for drivers? Because we obviously are going to have a new budget to be looking at, and we certainly, even if this wasn't a thing, we certainly would want to entice drivers to our district over others. So is that something that we're looking highly at, for our budget coming up?
Yes, absolutely. We're even looking at it now. So we're hoping to bring some proposals to the board to even, such as maybe some matching incentives and some other things. We've been meeting regularly with Gross and their regional management. So I think, we're trying to do everything we can. We also don't want to throw money at a problem that's not the source of the problem. So it's kind of a combination of things. There are less bus drivers in general. And right now what they seem to be doing, they're kind of moving around to different bus yards based on the incentives. So there's not an infinite pool of bus drivers right now. So.
In reading through all the emails, pro and con, on the start times, there were a lot of interesting points raised about how and why we transport as we do from different communities. And I hope those questions are being looked at as well beyond the blanket response that we're putting this on hold for now. Because I thought some of the questions were really valid and well thought through about why we do things as we do them.
One thing Jackie and I had talked about at one point was, like, right now we're busing students outside of our district to other schools, and that's a home run. It's from where they live, right, to that school, which could be, what, up to
10 miles beyond our.
10
sorry,
miles
10
beyond
beyond
our
boundary.
area. And so, the question I'd ask is, could we partnership with those other districts so that we have a handoff, so that we're getting our bus drivers back sooner instead of them, doing a 20-mile extra round trip?
Right, I can share that we are at the very tip of Chester County. So the challenge that we have is everybody would love for us to pick up their kids on our way to the programs, but nobody is coming our direction to go through O&J to get to Montgomery County schools. So that is one of the challenges that we have. But we are looking at different options, bringing in multiple contractors. So we are putting together a plan, a short-term plan as well as a long-term plan, because we do need to do better.
Is that 10-mile distance, is that like a state law? Like, what's the?
It is a state
Okay.
law that we're required to provide transportation to any student who resides in Owen J. Roberts School District and attends a private or charter school within 10 miles all the way around Owen J. Roberts border. So it's a law. Even if we shortened it to 5 miles, it would be helpful.
One time when we discussed this before, I noticed, and this is just going to be a vague summary, but I noticed that the money that is spent on transporting non-public school students or charter school students is equal to the amount of money that we spend transporting all of our students about. So it's something like, that those numbers those days, it was something like 400 private school students are costing us the same amount of money that it's costing us to transport our 5,200 students or something like that, because of going all over the world or whatever. So I'm curious as to if students in private schools or whatever, charter schools, if they opt out of busing, is there any incentive for them to do that? That would be something that could be cheaper for us?
It's always something we could look at if we get to that part. We do have a lot of non-riders already. So you have non-riders and then you have riders. So if you're going to offer an incentive, it has to be for everyone.
Everybody, yeah.
So
Do you know, could you guess, like, say, if we had 400 kids that we're transporting, how many non-riders, the equal amount or more?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, I know we're transporting probably close to 600 non-public students, but I don't know off the top of my head if they are non-riders, how many more are out there that we're not transporting, let's put
Right.
it that way? Because they have to fill out a form and request transportation. So,
Okay. I would
I
be
can-
interested in knowing some of those details of those numbers, because if we're spending, it was, you know, it's millions of dollars transporting 600 kids.
well, it is millions of dollars.
Yeah, it would be cheaper to offer them all an incentive to not be transported. And maybe those families would be like, great, you know? So just something to
We
consider.
can talk to our solicitor about that. I mean, it's definitely something that we can talk about.
Anything else? All right, moving on to 3.01, enrollment projections.
All right, good evening, everybody. As Frank pulls up the enrollment projections and the presentation, just a quick informational piece about this. So this is a multi-step process to get to this point to where we are. First step would be visiting the different township or municipalities. We have quite a few here in O&J Roberts that covers our area. So myself and Jackie, we visit the areas and speak with the township supervisors to get information kind of on the ground to see what's going on. We also visit the areas where housing might be being built or areas that could be for sale in the future based off farmland and things like that. The other piece is a contract through Decision Insight. Decision Insight is our vendor who provides us with pretty accurate enrollment projections as we go through the process. Over the years, these projections have been pretty accurate, impressively accurate through our 10-year enrollment process. So if we can go to the next slide, Frank. Just some factors, obviously, that we kind of contend with throughout the process. We have historical data, obviously the COVID variable. We have grade level cohorts that change from year to year, and residential development, area development, right? Well, that's a big one. And that's a lot of what they do is kind of predict the developments through that process, through the townships, and how many students it's going to bring to each area. I wanted to add, we've had talk throughout the last couple of meetings as well as open houses about our enrollment in charter schools. So there's our enrollment in charter schools starting with 2019-20 pre-pandemic. As you can see, we had 168, and now we're sitting at 161 with a spike during the pandemic, so we're all not surprised by that, I'm sure. And then we have our 8 students in kindergarten that are enrolled in a charter school. I did not calculate or input the private and parochial school students. I could do that for the board if needed in the future, but I wanted to just kind of focus on charter schools because I think bringing students back to the district is probably, you know, a good bet with starting with our charter schools. Typically, students who might attend a parochial school or a private school have different reasons and some different values they might be interested in, but charter schools would be maybe the sweet spot. All right, Frank, go ahead, next slide there. So we're going to start out with South Coventry Township. South Coventry Township is one of our smaller townships. So three lots in the works, single unit houses, very small. They're finishing up a 14 single unit housing development. And then the big one that we were a little concerned about was a 67 townhome development on the corner of 23 and 100. That was pretty close to our stadium there, and then by the Ridgely development. So that has been denied by the township. Now, keep in mind that someone owns that land and they'd like to prosper off of it and make some money. So that doesn't mean nothing's going to go through in the future, as you know, we know what happens when that process happens. So something to keep in mind. They do have water and sewer capacity issues and conditional use upon the Ridgely development right there across from the high school. East Nant Mill, a lot of their ground, they have a lot of open space out there that is protected land. A very small community, very small township, and they have a 3-lot subdivision right on Mansion Road. There's an old abandoned general store there that's pretty dilapidated that they're going to want to rebuild as well in the process and put 3 houses to the right of 401. North Coventry Township, okay, completely a little bit of a juxtaposition from East Nant Mill. North Coventry, some sketch plans for 60 townhome development near East Cedarville, along 100 near the boat shop, some sketch plans for that, 60 to 80 homes. The Ashwood Apartments, which are absolutely beautiful, they've redone the entire apartment complex. There's 45 units in there, and that will bring students to North Coventry Elementary School, as it has in the past. They have some zoning and sewer issues there as well, and you'll see that's a consistent process through some of these townships in regards to the wastewater and sewer. Go ahead, Frank. West Vincent Township, obviously you have the big property across there where the Henkin Library is. It's been developing over the years. There was a senior living area that was denied due to many things, but there was some complaints about the visual aspect of the senior living area. Senior living areas are good for school districts. They do bring in good tax dollar money and do not bring up enrollment, but they denied that, and the builder continues to pursue plans. That's a big piece of land there. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And then also the 100-acre farm on Pewtown Road. There's a farmer there that has a nice piece of land that it can always be possibly developed in the future. So just another piece. I wanted to make this a little bit of a comprehensive presentation to give you kind of a good outlook on each of these townships. So we have our two big ones coming up. East Vincent Township. We have the Jones Motor Site redevelopment, possibly a large amount of homes there, proposed at 724 and West Bridge Street. Timing is somewhere between 18 months to 2 years. They all have wastewater issues as well, and part of that process who's developing that land is a new wastewater plant, which will then allow the subsequent bullet points there on Stony Run Road and West Bridge, 7 Stars development with some single homes, 16-lot townhome development off Park Road, and then obviously Magnolia Reserve is currently being built, and I think it's near finishing up. It's 91 homes right there. Another big one is East Coventry Township. We have Coventry Chase developed and approved. Groundbreaking is going to be this upcoming spring. 114 townhomes, and that backs up to Coventry Glen, which is another development. Lennar Builders has some land off Bethel Church Road. They're going to build some some bigger homes and some larger lots there. The plan is being revised, but that's to the left on your way to 23. And then preliminary development for Fricks Lock Road in 724. There's 88 acres of farmland, proposing 120 single-family homes, 120 townhomes, looking for mid-approval in 23. Construction can start late 23, early 24. So that really wraps up the residential development. We obviously, in the first slide, interest rates and homes were at a premium, and now we're seeing the market turn in regards to real estate with high interest rates and more homes on the market. So really, Decision Insight took that information from each of the township supervisors and the data they provided and created a 10-year enrollment chart for each of the elementary schools, middle school from those elementary schools, high school from the elementary, and the middle schools. So first up, we have East Coventry Elementary School. There's a theme here you'll see throughout the process, and you'll see that our enrollment is going down aside from East Vincent Elementary School, and obviously a lot of new homes being built in that area. So this is East Coventry. We're seeing a minus 60 over 10 years, or 13% loss in enrollment over 10 years. You can see 23 is highlighted because that's the upcoming year. Taking a look at that, you can see the trends that are kind of going downwards as those years go through the process there. East Vincent, this is our big uptick school at plus 80 or plus 15%. And you can see the totals there going from about 535 next year to about 615. So that's an increase there. North Coventry, similar to East Coventry, minus 79 or a minus loss of 15% enrollment at North Coventry, going from 541 to 462. And the history of North Coventry is a downward enrollment. 4 years ago, they were sitting one of the highest enrolled buildings in the district, and now they've been overtaken by West Vincent and French Creek. But you can see a little bit of a downward trend. Moving forward, we have French Creek. French Creeks are staying the same school. They are pretty consistent, so I would say they're a consistent school to minus 3%. Rounding out at about 549 at the 10-year mark, sitting at about 564. Their enrollment has gone up, and within that building. West Vincent, a lot of the land in West Vincent, obviously, I talked a little bit about that, but a lot of that land is protected out there. They had a minus 96 decrease within a 10-year period there, or a minus 17%. So we are seeing a decrease, probably one of the biggest surprises through that enrollment projections, I think, as we went through that process with getting those numbers from West Vincent. So obviously the end result is the middle school, which the feeder schools, the elementary schools, go into. This is good news, I think, for the middle school because they are tight in some specific general common areas in that building. They're at a minus 119 over a 10-year or minus 14%. So if they're sitting at around 910 this year, they could be sitting at 752 in 2032, 10 years. So not an immediate relief in some of those areas in that building, but something that we can possibly look forward to. The high school, seeing that overall impact at about a minus 200 at the end of the 10-year span here, or minus about 10 or 11% at the high school. In the overall, the next slide, Frank, that'll give us a good picture of the district. There's a plus over at the kindergarten and first grade area after 10 years, looking kind of more short term. We can look at maybe 2026, maybe 3-4 years out, which we would be maybe at a minus, around a minus 100 with that. They are looking at we are looking at a total of about minus 424 for the district in the 10 years. But, 10 years is a long way from now. We want to plan for the future. But if we look more immediately, we see the kind of the general decrease is pretty consistent over the years. You can see those bottom percentage changes at a minus 8 for the district over a 10-year period. And some residential development, I just kind of went through those, but this is the information that Decision Insight gained, and then Jackie and I compared it to our visits to the townships. You can see those developments and some of the proposed housing units that are going to go into those units. We could possibly seeing some aging out with our current population and our current developments, with a new crop of groups coming in with our building developments. So that's kind of, we're getting more, but we also have to look at our 5,000 or so families and what's happening in those houses as students start to age out of public school education through that 13-year experience.
Okay.
Questions? Yeah.
I just have a quick question. So if you looked back 10 years ago or whatever at projections, how accurate have they been? Or is our 5,400 or whatever we're at now, was that predicted?
Accurate.
Accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly accurate with how they do it.
Yeah.
They're the data experts, and they're in the business to be accurate. Of course, there are obviously certain variables. I think the COVID variable is a big variable. I think that's a hit people financially big time. And then at the same time, we're seeing this real estate market, an interesting one. So, but other than some maybe big pieces, they're pretty accurate.
Getting back to the first slide, we have 161 charter school students, right? But from our school start discussion, we're taking 600 kids around on buses. So does that mean like 400 are going to private?
Correct,
Wow.
correct.
Well, and we also bus the CCI grade or preschool
Placements.
Great.
Yeah, we
Right.
so we have parochial, we have private, we have charter, we have students that are in our out-of-district placements and approved private schools. So there's like kind of a plethora of different pieces that go into that 600 number.
And I'm a little confused because, we're supposed to be getting around maybe 800 more houses over the next 10 years, but we're like dropping 1,000 kids enrolled. 1829, no, not, I think we have 1829 now, and we're going to get down to 1657. So are these houses just being, I don't understand, why aren't there kids coming out of those houses?
So
I'm not talking about
yeah,
the birds
it's a
and
great.
bees.
So I expected this question because it's a very good one, and I'm glad you noticed 1,000 because you are looking at 1,000. So if you're adding 5, and then you're losing 5, so that 1,000, that minus 1,000. So it goes back to like our current families in their homes maybe had children or have children in the buildings, and then they age out. Necessarily looking at the trends of who's selling and when they're selling, and so. There are families that, people in this room that might be still living in their home, but they don't have any kids going to the school. So their house is not selling to turn over to a new family or younger family where they have little kids going into the district. Of course, that's happening all the time, all over the place, but their predictability piece is involved in these calculations. It's a lot. We were surprised.
Yeah.
We were surprised. Yeah, we weren't thinking this.
So I need to sell my house and have a family move in with young kids.
Yeah.
No,
If
no,
that's what we
old
want.
people with no kids
all-
are good for the district, John.
Yeah, what's your goal here? We got to look at the goal.
But Dr. John, that was my concern too, because when we were looking at the new developments, so in my mind, I was thinking we were adding 500 students to the district. So when we originally got this report, we looked at it, I said to Brad, I said, what's going on here? And so we took a look at it, and this has been accurate, because I was thinking of 500 more kids in our district over the next 10 years, and now it's 500 less when you look at these reports. So that was a concern for me as well. Yep.
I noticed a little blip here in the data. I'm looking at the district page. We've got K through 12 on the left, and you've got 2022 through 2032 going across the top. So the general trend seems to be like enrollment is going down, but if I pick a class, like say I pick 3rd grade, and then I follow them like diagonally southeast, the numbers seem to be increasing rather than decreasing.
So if you take
In
third grade,
general.
if you take third grade, for example, if we look at 378 for 2023, right?
Yeah, it's,
And then we go across.
378, right.
We go across, we go to 364.
No, but I'm talking about taking that number and following that same cohort
Oh, I see what you're saying.
down and to the right.
Right.
So through that, 398 in 2022 turns into a
436.
36, yeah. So, and it seems, I haven't done a full analysis on this in this few minutes I've been saying here, but it seems like most of them, cohorts seem to be increasing, but the total enrollment seems to be decreasing.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm too much in the weeds here.
we
Sorry.
just took the totals from each year. So as the years go, that might be increasing, but there could be cohorts that might decreasing, but there could be cohorts, like you said, that are increasing.
Right, and one other comment that I thought was interesting, and we've been seeing this trend for a little bit, our older, higher grade levels are more populated in the most recent years than our lower. The incoming grades have less students than the outgoing grades, so that's how you're seeing some shrinkage there too. I see your trend, though. I see what you're talking about, yeah.
Brad, do you see the trend here that we see in a lot of districts where parents send their kids for primary religious education, like maybe K to 5, but then want the broader opportunities that O&J offers, so they transition them to the middle school, or maybe it happens into 9th grade at the high school?
So I haven't really researched that or actually looked at specific data for that, but I will tell you some of the conversations that I've had professionally and personally recently have been they bring their students, their kids back at the high school level because of what we have to offer at the high school level, and thinking post-secondary school. So there have been conversations here about that and why some of our folks are coming back to the district at a certain time.
Brad, I just have a couple of things. One's a quick question and then a hypothetical. For East Vincent, is that building going to be able to absorb the increase in enrollment that it's projected to go up to? It looks like it's going to peak around 2030.
Yeah, it'll be tight. So we're going to have to, at a district, we're going to have to take a look at how we can manage that, because we do have buildings that are like going down. Like, for example, East Coventry is going down. So one of our brand new buildings in the district will be possibly underutilized, where another new building might be overutilized. So we're going to have to take a look at that and see what shifts need to be made.
So what was the enrollment projections that were used when that building was built? I mean, it's only about 5 or 6 years old now.
I can't answer that. I don't know if Jackie, you can answer that. Probably those that year, the year was.
I mean, they are the ones that came from Decision Insight. So overall, district-wide, our projections are good, but we're seeing some shifts. And when we did our, 2018 was when East Coventry was finished. And when we did our last, I want to call it redistricting or shifting, we were hoping to get through 7 years, just because of the way the population kind of shifts, sometimes depending on where construction is. So it's kind of in the same area, but right across the border.
Okay, and then just a hypothetical. I'm wondering, like, would the enrollment projections look any different if we were to look at a full-day kindergarten? So are we losing families in the district because we don't have a full-day kindergarten? And will we see an uptick in enrollment in the district if we were to look at proposing a full-day kindergarten?
So we do have, kindergarten students that go to a private schools, charter schools that have full day. One of the reasons I wanted to note that 8 students that are currently attending charter schools, but we do have kids in private schools. I would think enrollment would go up because we have full day in kindergarten. We have a lot of parents that come back in first grade. Not a lot. I don't want to exaggerate here, but the parents that are there in a private school for kindergarten that need full day come back after that first year into our first grade.
Right, so is there any way we could actually get an enrollment projection based on if we did have a full-day kindergarten? Because I think that would be helpful if we actually wanted to, as a board, take a look at whether it's feasible and makes economic sense for the district to implement something like that.
Well, and I also see that it looks, if projections are going down, I would say we have a lot less building modifications that we have to do, which would help move in that direction also. If it'll free up some classrooms if we have that much of a decrease in at least 3 elementary schools that I saw. So.
Yeah, we could take a look at trying to figure out what that would look like. We could, we'll put our minds together and come up with a good solution to at least get an idea, even if we kind of poll our families that are in those schools and see how many come back each year, do some digging to see what those numbers would look like. Yeah.
So it looks like we don't need to refurbish anything that we have right now to accommodate new students. So all we have to do is kind of upgrade things, but we're not doing any major new buildings as such.
Right.
that will-
At this
that'd be nice
point,
for the
with
capital.
current programming, no new buildings, let's put it that way, with current programming. But if we would have to look at.
Right, and we have to look
Other
at programs, and,
Yep.
one of the things that came up at Town Hall, there were some folks really advocating for full-day kindergarten, and if that's something that we were to look at as a district, certainly there would be some building implications there, because we would need additional classrooms for full-day kindergarten in each of our schools.
Any more questions? If not, we'll move on to 4.01, Curriculum and Special Education Committee. Ms. Sabo.
Thank you, Dr. John. Tonight, the Special Education and Curriculum Committee will have 3 different presentations. I do just want to, at the beginning, just state that, hold on, I have to pull up my screen quick, I apologize. My computer's not. Special Education will be having listening sessions on December 7th and 14th.
yeah.
The first one will be in person, and the second one will be via Zoom. And then I also wanted to just go over what we have left for our ELA curriculum review, which Dr. Monahan is going to the different buildings, to the PTA and PTO meetings, and doing an overview of what our ELA curriculum is. And the ones that are left, we have French Creek on November 15th, West Vincent on December 13th, and East Vincent on January 10th. So with that, I will hand it off to, do you want to start? The Zoom ones, no, that's the 14th of December, yeah. I'll hand it off to Mr. Bettman and Ms. Kristen Burke.
Great, thank you. So good evening once again. So I would like to present, along with, I have here to my left, Mrs. Kristen Burke. She's a special education supervisor for the district, for those of you who don't know Kristen. The Special Education Parent Student Executive, Special Education Parent Survey Executive Summary. So this information was gathered through our survey, through our Pennsylvania Special Education Cyclical Monitoring for continued improvement, which we do, or our special education audit. So the data is from actually October 1st, 2021. So the data is about a year old, be that as it may. It's the freshest data that we have through this process, and now we are providing an opportunity to present it. It happens every 6 years, so this is a result of a 6-year process or 6-year period of time. So a little bit of history about the survey. So this is actually the second survey that we did. Originally, we only had 13% of parents respond to the original survey. This triggered through our cyclical monitoring process a required second survey to go out. What was nice about this process is that the district we were allowed to kind of add questions or change some questions to get more information through the process. We used a Google form instead of the state survey process. So with this second wave of survey, all our folks kind of helped to push this out. We had our special education case managers, our supervisors, and our principals as well to get the survey out to get as many parents to provide feedback as possible. The second survey went out on May of 22. So the document that's embedded within the packet this evening for us has information and data from the survey. It also has some kind of next steps that the special education department and our folks are going to take a look at and work on over the year. I want to be very mindful that you'll see as you read through the data and the data set points that we looked at all groups of students, including those receive the most services. So our students receive life skills support, our students receive autistic support, emotional support, and possibly multi-disability support. We wanted to look at all. I was not able to put that data or make it public because it's such a small data set, and whenever you have such a small data set, there's some possible identifiable information within that data set. But we analyzed and then we synthesized the data based off of the different groups. You can see the breakdown, just some quick facts. We have 1,000 students with IEPs in the district. That's 20% of our population. We had 21% participate in the survey, or 229 parents or guardians. 113 were in elementary school. Those numbers dropped to 32 in middle school and back up in high school to 83. Keep in mind, our middle school is the smallest populated building level. Communication was done by the different pieces of the special education department, case managers, supervisors, and principals. 63% of the participants, or the parents, have a child that receive related services. So related services could be occupational therapy, speech therapy, and the like. So we had those related services and information too. We asked as well. As you can see, types of special educational support, we had 55% had students that were in learning support, 13% speech and language support, 12% life skills support, autistic support 12% participation rate, and emotional support 10%. Please keep in mind, for those of you who don't know, we do have our highest numbers are in learning support and speech and language support, with our lowest numbers in the three other aforementioned groups. There was a strongly disagree, neutral agree, or strongly agree through that process. So some information about the data. The respondents were asked to provide, respondents noted that they were asked to provide input for their child's most recent IEP meeting. You can see the data there is 97% or above those pieces. You can see the different percentages at the elementary, middle, and high school. You can see learning support there, so 196 and 92. So I want to be specific, and when I talked about our data sets and our small data sets, we were able to synthesize the data for our students that receive life skills support, our students that receive autistic support, and emotional support as well. It's imperative that all of our parents receive progress reports on their child's IEP goals. So they are the percentages of parents saying that they receive these. Obviously, our goal is 100% for very specific. It's almost impossible to get 100% on a survey, but some of these, our goal is 100%, no doubt. We asked them if their child spends the right amount of time each day in their general education classroom. So we have students with disabilities, students who receive services. That could be in a special education classroom, could be in a speech support room, could be in a related service room, working with a mental health therapist. So they could be receiving support in all different types of rooms. So here's our percentage, if they agree, about getting supports in there, spending the right time with their classroom teacher or teachers at the different levels. We asked about if the respondents agree or strongly agree if their child is making progress on their IEP goals. And you can see the numbers there at each of the levels. And then if they felt that they were a respected member of the IEP team, and that would be the parent or guardian. So you can see those numbers for there and how they felt in those situations. Some of our smaller numbers, we were maybe like 1 out of 2 or 3 out of 6 or maybe 7 out of 8. So those smaller numbers, once again, are not there, but we took a look at those. So this one, which we probably saw we did see our lowest data points for this. This is our students our students that are transitioning, so students that are 14 years or older. So there's a piece of the IEP that asks the team, including the student, because the student's part of the IEP meeting as they get older, what are the goals post-secondary? What are the goals employment? We do write goals for post-secondary education and employment goals, no matter what. Through that process, we have not many at the middle school level because they would have to be 14 years of age at 8th grade. I mean, we do have students that are born earlier in the year or students that might be at that level, at that grade level, at that age. Majority of them are at the high school. So we're at 70% at middle school and 79% at the high school. And you can see our learning support numbers is pretty similar to that high school. And the respondents strongly agree that employment goals align with the family goals of the student. We at the middle school, a very small number, so I didn't want to put that number there, but we were about 15%. Chose neutral. I think that number is under 10 at 50%, and then the high school at 70%. So this is employment goals. I just kind of want to elaborate a little bit on this. And I had a chance to talk to Mr. Milnes, the special education supervisor at the high school, who provided some really good information for this presentation. So post-secondary goals get more delineated, more detailed as the child gets older, obviously 14, and then as they go through high school. The special education teachers look at the adjustments over the years from year to year. The state did mention, and this is kind of another piece, that our transition planning goals were robust when they made comments, but taking a look at the data, we take a look at big transition comprehensive plan review. So we give a battery of tests to 9th grade and 11th grade during IEP timeline. They have a series of evaluated tools, and they speak with the student and talk with the student about these 2 goals. Every student who's college bound or is thinking about college or has a little bit of interest, we do some assessments. So colleagues and teachers have a fresh scope about where they are. We wait until the student's 16 so we can give the adult we can give a specific assessment. We can't give that until they're 16. So that's gives us some information as we look to college. We also have our Chapter 339 school counselor plan, which I'll probably speak about this coming March. It's due this coming March, and this guidance team is working on that. But in that 339 action plan, we talk about more in-depth career goals for that. All students, no matter what, they'll get a goal, a course of study, and activity. So we'll go through that process. And like I said, much of the nitty-gritty happens during those conversations. So as we kind of looked at this and kind of looked at our data, we said, all right, what's some of the next steps we want to immediately do? And things that we're putting in place are having more robust conversations with parents. I think it's important that we ask parents, like, what are their goals for their child? What do they want? That's an important piece. Those conversations are happening. It's not like they weren't happening in the past, but I think we need to spend more time on those things and take a look at those questions. And then at the end of that section of the IEP, when the IEP team goes over, it's imperative that the team takes a look at maybe the draft goals they wrote and checks them again, right? It's a team process, so we want to make sure the activities are aligned with their own goals of their own child. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It's a conversation that that people have with that IEP teams have with that process. There's some inclusion questions in the survey. You can see the next up, if participants agree or strongly agree that your child's school openly supports inclusion. And we have if the district openly supports inclusion for students with disabilities. So we have those numbers as well. And we're always looking for inclusive environments. It's something that's important to us as a district. And we the goal is always to look at that. And so that's definitely conversations to have in the future in depth about those pieces as well. And you can see the parent training is an important piece. It's one of my goals and one of our team's goals. The parent training is something we want to get started pretty quickly, but we want to do this and the listening sessions first before we kind of go into the next piece, because the more information we gather from parents, the better we can be prepared to find trainings on coping skills and mental health, behavior management, social skills, and post-secondary goals. Once again, these are parent trainings. So I'll be working with the team to take a look at what's talked about during the listening sessions and what's the need and how we can provide these trainings. We have not had good participation in trainings in the past, I will be honest with you. You can see we only have 81% of the families indicated that they never attended a parent training. With that in mind, we've had some really good parent educational pieces throughout the district over the years in different of the buildings and then district-wide. So we want to see how we're doing it and how we can improve this area so we can get more people involved. Like any good survey, we want action items, right? Anybody could just do a survey, but without action items, it's kind of pointless. So here are some next steps. Some of the things in the beginning that we've kind of worked on or have met, but with the piece, we want to work on a special education supports and services kind of welcome for new parents and also for current parents. So our IEP facilitators are going to be working on that document in the next month or so. We're going to start a communication newsletter for our parents. Michael, myself, and our team is going to rework the website for our student services, something we have a goal to do as well. Obviously, you know about the listening sessions on the 7th and the 14th. Those sessions are going to be live on the 7th and then Zoom on the 14th. Our parents that have students that have GIEPs are part of the Gifted Education Program, as well as 504s, Section 504, which are supported by our school counselors, are invited as well. Possibly take a look at video informational vignettes on the website to provide informational videos for parents. And obviously our trainings are a special piece. We've had, before I finish, and I'm giving you a lot of information here and talking a lot, but we've had about 10 to 20 parents that said they'd like a follow-up phone call from the special ed survey. Once we have the listening sessions, we're going to take a look at who attended, and then our supervisors plan to make follow-up phone calls to some of those folks that wanted to provide more information. There's a lot of information. It is almost a year old, but in my opinion, it's still relevant data as we kind of move forward with this process. Questions?
Couple questions. About the career, like post-secondary, those numbers are low on the satisfaction there. I wasn't following exactly what you were saying on that. Are you saying that perhaps those numbers are lower, the students themselves are allowed to give feedback as part of that because they're a member of the IEP team, the student themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is any part of why that those numbers are lower, that the students might have different views then about what their educational goals should be and whether they're aligning with what they want? The reason I'm asking that is, remember that other survey, the other schools perception survey we got, where a large number of students were saying that their coursework was not applicable to their life or whatever. We had that thing on there. That number was kind of disturbing there. So I'm wondering whether that's sort of a trend that students in general have that kind of feeling that what I'm doing here in school is not, helping me with my goals or whatever.
Yeah, I got to say, you're spot on, because that is the truth. And it's not the truth for every situation, but actually Mr. Mills and I had this conversation about it where there were different views from parent. So parent and student had different views of what their goals should be. Mm-hmm. And then also possibly too, maybe IEP team members on the team and what the student felt or maybe what the parent felt. But there are juxtaposition views with those different groups of people. And also, you taking a look at where they want to go. Like maybe a parent says, I want you to go to college, where he or she might say, I'd rather get into a trade. I want to be a diesel mechanic. I want to work on HVAC, or vice versa. maybe you should take over your father's business. Well, I want to go to college. So yeah, those are conversations that are had. It's a great point.
I'm wondering then if some of the training that we're looking at, that people are all looking for, would be something in specific for that group of students who are in that, what am I doing after high school? And maybe students and parents could get some sort of information on that so that they can align themselves with what they're doing and get better, to get those numbers to be better, that they feel that we are aligning what we're doing with them with what they need. And then the other question is about, 54% felt that the training was adequate. So meaning a lot of people did not think the training was adequate. But I'm wondering if when training happens and, you say it's low attended, are people getting like feedback? You know how like sometimes you go to a conference, you fill out a little feedback form, like, was this helpful to you? What would you like to see in the future? Like that kind of thing. Because obviously if people aren't attending training, they're saying they want training, but then people aren't attending training. So maybe the training is not that effective or something.
It's a good point. I'm going to actually have Kristen maybe talk briefly about trainings in the past and some things they've done.
So in the past, some of the trainings were so low attended, it was like 1 or 2 parents.
Yeah.
So we got very direct feedback on those trainings and what they would like to see. A lot of the, pre-COVID, when we weren't doing things virtually, it was timing. If this was offered at a different time, if you provided childcare, if you provided, often when we offer food, or we've utilized our student clubs to provide childcare, we get better attendance for trainings that are happening in the evening. Circling back to your transition question, that was actually one of the areas identified that parents want more training in. And I know we have a transition coordinator at the high school who supports all of our students with IEPs. In helping them as a student understand the process too. So that is one of the areas that we as a team are looking at, providing additional training for our staff and our parents already as a result of the survey. But we can definitely survey parents following future trainings to see how we can improve. This particular data was kind of split as to parents who would want in-person versus virtual. I think we've become quite skilled in offering either a hybrid or multiple options for families. So moving forward, that would be our intent as well. If we provide something in person, to have a virtual option or make that training available via video on the website. So families who weren't able to attend would be able to still get the information.
Okay, thanks.
I would just going to tack on to that, and I think it's important with the informational video series that you're talking about. I think one of the challenges for training or for informational training is you may not be in the step of the process that training is being offered that week. So if it's a training on intro to IEPs, but I'm already 2 years into IEPs, it's not the right training for me. And so I like the idea of these videos, almost like a library or a catalog, that we can as parents go and hit that topic when that topic is of use to us. And I think that'll be a great resource for a lot of families.
Any other questions from the board?
As you mentioned, 21% participation is pretty lousy. When I was going to IEPs, we would always get paperwork to sign. And are we giving out these surveys during those meetings?
We did talk about that as a committee. We are not.
Oh, you guys talked about it.
It's definitely an idea in the future if we were to do this again, and how we're going to do it again. We haven't thought about the timeline. We obviously have the cyclical monitoring timeline that we follow, but it's definitely an option if something we can do in the future. Yeah.
They can't leave until they fill the survey out.
Yeah. Here's an iPad.
Sometimes emotions can be all over the place, though, in the middle of an IEP meeting. So sometimes you need to go home and digest before you fill something like that out, if I'm going to be honest. Any other questions from the board? I did want to open it up for a few moments if there's anybody in the audience or community online. Going once, going twice. Okay, so I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Soder. She's going to, is it Dr. Soder?
Right. So actually, our next item is the changes for the high school program of studies. And our high school principal, Steve Kohler, is actually out of town, but he has joined us via Zoom, and he is going to review the changes for the high school.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join remotely this evening. So I'm going to go over our proposed changes for our program of studies next year. I'm going to give kind of a broad overview of the changes that we're recommending, but I'm happy to answer any more, I guess, more in-depth questions. So to start with, we're looking at the addition of 4 new courses for next year. The first of which will be offered through our business education department and is a personal finance class. This class will be offered in an online format because we really want to try to maintain as much flexibility as possible to give as many students access to this. This is going to focus on areas like money management, budgeting, use of credit, investing, consumer rights. Our students who are not on a calculus track have an opportunity to work with these topics through our applied maths course, but students who move on through calculus don't have an opportunity to look at this, and we recognize that this was a weakness in an area where students are interested, and so we wanted to offer a personal finance class that was accessible to all of our students. The next 2 courses are offered through the health and physical education department, and these are courses that we discussed when we talked about changes to the program of studies. So the first course is our health and wellness class. This replaces the previous Health 1 and Health 2 courses. So this is a 1-semester class that students will take. Ideally, most students will take it in their 10th grade year. And this is just the combination of the Health 1 and the Health 2 class into one coherent 1-semester long class that'll meet 5 days per week. The second course through Health and PE is our lifelong activities class. This is going to replace the PE 9-10 and the PE 11 and 12 course. It'll bring both of those together, but is essentially the same course, but again, increasing flexibility by moving it to a 9-12 course. And on top of that, we'll still continue to offer our yoga, our competitive PE, and our weight training courses. And then the last one is one that we're actually really excited about, offered through our science department, which is Introduction to Beekeeping. This was proposed by Mr. Reichley, who does this as a hobby, but I think is something, as we are encouraging our students to just kind of take a larger world view, we recognize that what's going on with the bee population now is very problematic for a number of reasons. So a great opportunity for students to kind of dig in more deeply on this. Offered through the science department, so very heavily focused on the biology end of bees, bee behavior, diseases, pests, swarming, things along those lines. But something that we think would be a great opportunity for students who want to take kind of a deeper dive into a specific aspect of biology. And this would be a 1-semester long elective course for students offered through the science department. Next up, just in terms of format change, we're just recommending one change in terms of format. Our DECA and business writing classes existed in a hybrid format previously. And so students would have 1 day a week in which they had that course. We're just going to shift that to a complete online course. This will open up flexibility for students by meeting 1 day every cycle. That really limited or prevented students from taking another course during that time. So having it be fully in the online format opens up another space in student schedules and is one fewer limiting factor. And our teachers thought that really not much would be lost by not having that 1 day in person. They felt like they could work around that. And then lastly, we're recommending archiving 2 courses next year, our discrete math course and our multivariable calculus course. Neither of these has run in previous years, and as we look at our projections for next year, we just won't have a number of students that would allow us to run those courses, and so we're going to archive them and recommend that we take that out of the program of studies for next year, just because we don't want to put out a class in front of students that we know is not something that's to run, and so we don't want to kind of put that false hope out in front of the couple of students that are going to run and that we can make sure that we fit them in. And then the last change, and this came at recommendation of the board, but in looking at the language in the program of studies, we're just going to make some adjustments from prerequisites. Prerequisites for courses had a number of different percentages that were connected to them, and they weren't consistent across the board. And the use of just a percentage grade in a course is kind of outdated anyway. We have a lot more, a much wider array of data available to us. In addition to the grade that students got in the course, we've got some standardized test results. We can look at all sorts of different things. And so our teachers are really using much more sophisticated models to make a recommendation for what course is appropriate for a student. And so we're just pulling those specific percentages off of the prerequisites and leaving it at teachers can really use their intuition and the data that they have available to make an appropriate course placement for a student. And then certainly if a student is interested in taking a higher level course or a lower level course, the starting point of that is a conversation with the teacher. And then we're also more than happy to have conversations with students and with parents if they are not in agreement with the recommendation. And that is the overall recommendations of our proposed changes for next year. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
I'm not sure if this is a question. Sorry, this is Rita. I don't know if you can see that it's me who's speaking.
Yep.
Can you help us understand why these two classes haven't, or these two archive classes, in your opinion, haven't run? Is it that our students necessarily aren't prepared for that level math? Is it a scheduling issue? Is it simply a marketing issue of the topics, or
Just in numbers.
Yeah, it's really the track that students are on. So to be able to run that multivariable calculus class, students at a minimum would need to be in the Calc BC class in their junior year. And that is typically just a couple of students. I think right now, if I remember correctly, we have 2 students who would be eligible to move into that class next year. So it's just, you have to be pretty far along in your progression and pretty far advanced in math and have kind of accelerated through a number of different steps to be able to be ready for multivariable calculus before you graduate.
okay?
And discrete math would be a similar situation.
So it is that we don't have students who are at that level to take that math. I know.
Correct.
At this time. And then can you help us understand, seeing that we're looking at 2 higher level math classes coming off, what are our options for those students who are coming out of that calculus AB? You know, what are their options without these 2 classes available to them?
Yeah, so when we looked at where our current students stand, all of the students that will finish Calc BC this year that would need an additional math course would not have taken our AP statistics course or would not have taken our AP computer science courses, which are both in the math department. And so in their 12th grade year, we could get them into stats or into computer science. And we have 2 students who are in the Calc BC class as 10th grade students right now, and we would work with them to identify an alternate option for their senior year through potentially an online platform or another party. We have used an online multivariable calculus class previously. Our students have not traditionally been successful in it at all. Of the 14 or 15 students that have done it over the course of the 6 years, only 2 students have completed it. But that is certainly a conversation that we can have with students, but we want to make sure that we're being open and transparent about what that option looks like.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question just about the course prerequisite change there. I understand obviously that the percentage might not have been a useful data point, but I'm wondering if there's going to be any sort of standard as to what teachers will follow, as far as, are they going to be required to follow certain other data points, or can they just pick and choose what they want to use for their recommendations?
No, we'll provide standard data points. This was something that we actually piloted last year in a number of courses and are extending this year through Linkit, because we have all of our data warehoused in Linkit. We can essentially kind of build out our own algorithm that, based off of the student data that's in there, makes a recommendation for a level that a course that a student should move into, but then the teacher can look at that recommendation in relation to all of the data that's there and can make an adjustment to that if they so choose. But the data that's being presented is a standard set of data, and the prediction or the recommendation that's being made is the same regardless of the the teacher that that student has. So, we've got 4 or 5 different biology teachers. If a student's data set looks the same, the recommendation is going to be the same for all of those, which actually brings a little bit of standardization to the process where it was more subjective in the past. But still, right, we recognize that, teachers have an autonomy and an intuition to make a recommendation that goes against kind of what that mathematical recommendation is, but we want that to be a conversation with students and ultimately with families if that's appropriate.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Steve, I think the introduction to beekeeping is such a great idea because of their importance to the environment. Will one prerequisite be that you're not allergic to bee stings?
Yeah, we'll probably have to work through that and talk to Jackie about that in terms of what our insurance policy dictates.
Or they may have to put on those big white suits that.
Well, hold on, there's not going to be bees on campus from my understanding. So.
At least to start.
Yeah, so
Plenty of bees around.
wildcat honey. So they assume, the students will be able to like go to hives and, learn that kind of stuff.
If we have interested students, yes.
Okay. And, I want to know why 2 years after my last kid graduate, we finally get a personal finance course.
I think by popular demand, really, I mean, it's something that has continued to be talked about. And we just recognize, I think to your point, like a real deficit for our students. And we want to make sure that we're bringing that in to give that opportunity to students as they move forward.
Any more questions from the board?
Do we have a statement on the PE flexibility that's going to be in the course selection book?
That'll actually be part of the LNP meeting later
Okay.
tonight.
Later.
Yes.
I will open it up quick to questions from the community. Going once, twice? Okay, we can. Yep.
Are you going to remove the prerequisites at the middle school level also? And moving elementary kids into the middle school? And I guess that goes a lot into the math area for me.
This is for the high school right now. The middle school one's coming up next.
Are you going to have that on next? Okay.
Yeah, they'll be speaking about the middle school changes next.
Okay. And are you is this recording going to be available before the regular meeting? Because I thought you guys did a great job tonight. I thought I can tell you guys did stuff and you actually listened to people, including me. So I'm very pleased with what you did. But I also wish, why can't you have a separate curriculum meeting? Because I feel this is shoved into this meeting and it's getting close to the Eagles.
Sorry about that. Thank you, though. Any other questions from the community? Okay, we'll move on to middle school.
So actually, our changes for middle and elementary. For middle school, we have no changes in the actual courses, just some changes to some of the course names. And in an effort to make things a bit more clear for our middle level families, we wanted to include the actual grade level for some of these courses. So you'll see our pre-algebra course is now called 7th grade pre-algebra. That 1A course is 8th grade algebraic concepts, and Algebra 1B is that Algebra 1. These are a little more in keeping with what we have at the high school level. Again, no changes in the content or the assessments of these courses, just changes in the names. And so if you sort of keep score for how this progresses through the year, so here at the curriculum committee, we take a look at course changes that we want for high school, changes like this for middle level, and then eventually the Legislative and Policy Committee takes a look at a regulation a bit later in the year that has our course offerings K to 12. And so that's where all of this eventually gets written and included in the regulation for the coming year. So just as a point of clarification, those high school changes, we get board approval for in November so that they're ready for our students for registering for those courses next month. And then these changes are part of that regulation update that we see later in the year for our L&P committee. Okay? So the other change that I wanted to share is with our elementary world language program. We do expect to be using that staff at the secondary level next year. We have some increased needs at the secondary level, and we would like to move that staff into our level 1 language classes to provide some more support and to decrease the class size of those languages. And so we will be moving that staff to our secondary program for next year.
Are you saying that's a permanent move, like a full-time move, a partial move? Can you just put a little bit more definition around that?
Right now, that's the staffing that we have. We would be making this permanent. If we would have a change later, have additional staff, that's possible. But right now, we are looking to make that permanent change and to move that staff to our secondary faculty.
So we're giving up on the elementary level language program for the time being? Is
Yes,
that?
we are.
Okay.
We will be continuing it this year, and our 6th graders will be finishing at the end of this semester, and our 6th graders will finish at the end of this semester. Our 5th graders will have it in the spring semester. So we will be continuing this year. And then we will be looking for other options for advertising those 4 languages for our middle level students in grade 6. We also can share that we have not seen an increase in our other languages as a result of our world language program at the elementary, but our 7th grade teachers were very pleased with their readiness in their 7th grade course. But we do recognize we have greater need at the secondary level, both in the middle school and the high school, and we'd like to have additional staff there.
And that'll help support smaller class sizes and.
That would support smaller class sizes, and that would support, for the high school, the big benefit would be that we have students who take a world language for the first time in high school who may not have had the language arts skills at the middle level, and we could really benefit from having some co-taught classes for that level of learner at the high school. So we would like to move that staff to the secondary faculty.
I did want to ask, I thought Ms. McCreary brought up a good point. So is there a reason that we couldn't adapt the prerequisites like we're doing at the high school to the middle school?
Really, I think at this point, and I can have the supervisors chime in if they wish, really at this point, it's math, and that's the one that would just depend on their current grade 6 data. So that is something that we could consider, but it's, I think.
Very similar to what's happening at the high school level, happening at the middle school level as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, I want to say that we've been using that testing data longer than the high school. We have not had it. Yeah.
So do we want to put it in writing then, since?
We can talk with the middle school leadership about that. Their program of studies is just different. You know, that's just that middle school course guidelines. You can talk with them about that.
Any other questions from the board? Any other questions from the community? We have one hand raised.
Carrie Culp, if you could unmute. Please state your full name and township of residence.
Hey, it's Carrie Culp, East Coventry Township. Just a point of clarification on this, which is kind of circling back a couple years to what brought us kind of consistently coming to these meetings to begin with. My understanding is that one of the other prerequisites that does apply in terms of looking at grade point averages, in terms of placement of courses in the middle school, is the movement from sixth grade into seventh grade, the placement into science, which is, I believe, the one remaining class that does actually offer an honors weighted class moving into seventh grade. And then again, just for clarification point, I believe there are specific prerequisites, grade point average prerequisites that determine the placement from seventh grade into eighth grade. So again, I'm just looking for some clarification on why we're doing away with those prerequisites on the high school level, but we're not going to consistently do that down the board, down through the middle school as well. Thanks.
We were asked to look for more consistent language for this for the high school. And because the high school is currently engaged in that MTSS process, I do think that what they are proposing for the program of studies makes sense and is actually probably in fairly good keeping with what they've been doing. So we certainly can ask those same questions at the middle level. As I say, their program of studies timeline and process is just different. So it's not to say that we can't do that. We just have not done that. We can ask the question.
Thank you, Dr. Soder and Mr. Bentman for tonight. We can. Hi.
Hi, Samantha Krosky. I'm just asking for the board to keep in the back of their mind when I hear that you speak of smaller class sizes.
Can you give your name?
Sure, Samantha Horosky.
And your.
Elverson.
Thanks.
When I hear Warwick Township, when I hear you talk about smaller class sizes for the high school and language, I don't deny that that's a need, but I do ask that the board keep in mind moving forward smaller class sizes in some of our younger grades. I think that's a real need in our school district to look at these class sizes in K through 3, especially first and second grade, and think about that some of those class sizes are larger than our high school classes right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it was hard to hear about the language in the elementary school in the back. I think it was hard to hear that. So in my understanding, you're going to be pulling the language out of the sixth grade level, because I don't understand why you're pulling it when other schools are still offering it at the lower grades, which is what the push to get it back into sixth grade was originally. So like, for example, Conestoga offers language introduction at fourth grade. So if you're pulling it out, you guys also have to look at why you're wondering why people aren't coming to this school anymore, which is the academics. So also, again, I think a standalone curriculum meeting would make it easier for those of us that are really love this topic in the public to attend.
Well, I can respond that our purpose for having that sixth grade exploratory was to increase the number of students who were taking our lesser world languages. And we have not realized any change in that. We have the same % of students who are choosing to take Spanish, Latin, German, and French. And so we have not seen any changes in our numbers over the years that we've had that exploratory. We have seen students have greater readiness in those languages when they come to seventh grade. But at the same time, we have great need in our world language classes at the secondary level. And we believe that we can better use the resources that we have, which are very limited in world language. We believe that we will serve our students better to move that faculty to the secondary program.
I think it's something to say. You've specifically talked to me about it, where world language is a hard place to find staffing for. So I think that that's part of the struggle too, and considering we're looking at a staffing shortage for a couple of years to come still, it's something that we really had to think about.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think it comes down to limited resources and the investment that we made in STEAM at the elementary level. We hired 5 full-time STEAM teachers and getting wonderful results and hearing great information. The kids are enjoying that. So if we were to do a comprehensive elementary foreign language program, you're talking at a lot of additional staff in order to do it right. So in prioritizing our resources, we're prioritizing the STEAM program right now. and don't think that what we're doing will have a negative impact on our secondary language programs.
Could I just offer, though, along those lines, I mean, there is, I think, an alternative. I don't know how feasible it would be, but there is self-guided, fully immersive language programs you could implement in the classroom that wouldn't require a lot of additional staff, and a capital investment probably related to the program itself. But I mean, I think that is an alternative that could be worth exploring.
Okay, well, moving on to 5.01, Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee. Mr. Hermanos.
Good evening. We've got two items here referenced for you to look at. The first item is the Act 1 budget timeline, which is the lawful dates that we need to meet for budget preparation for the following school year. I'm just going to not really go over that. And then the second one is more important because that's our timeline for the budget for next year, and our dates meet all the required dates by law from the Act 1. So just to highlight some dates here, we've got the January, we'll be having internal budget meetings. January 9th will be a working session with a preliminary draft budget and forecast. January 23rd is where we adopt our opt-out resolution for the tax rate increase limitation. And then March, we get pretty heavy into our budget planning in both working sessions and committee meetings. And then we will have our proposed final budget review in early April. And then our final budget approval is scheduled for May 22nd of 2023. Any additional comments? Ms. Crumrine?
No, you did a wonderful job, Mr. Hermanos. The only thing that I would like to ask of the committee and the board is, we've been following this process for a while, and we do have 6 scheduled public meetings, and we often add a few more as we get into the development of the budget and talk about areas that we may want to adjust or spend a little bit more time on. If there are any other formats or questions that you have regarding the way we move forward with the budget approval process, I would welcome your feedback.
There's public meetings in this timeline? I don't see what they are. Starting where?
Sure, starting, well, we had the kickoff, I'm sorry. The kickoff really is the enrollment projections, because that drives staffing in addition to any program of changes, program of study changes. So they're the first 2 pieces. So then we work through that. And in January, you'll see January 9th. So we'll start with.
So they're not standalone meetings, they're just incorporated into our regular work.
The working sessions, they're mostly incorporated into the working sessions, but and that's why I'm saying we usually add about 3, and when we add them as standalone finance. So we're open to adding standalone finance whenever you might want them.
I think we should get communications to let people know we're having these, because they always come in May for the first time. So if we get them, involved with the process earlier, we'll get the input earlier.
I think that's a very good point. And now that we have Michael, a new director of communications, I'll be speaking with him a lot, so that we're ensuring that we're reaching the public and engaging the public throughout the process. That's the goal.
That is all.
Okay, well, now we're ready for dessert. 6.01, LMP.
All right, first up on the agenda, I need to have approval of our meeting minutes from our meeting on March 28th, 2022. So if I could have the committee make a motion to approve the
So
minutes.
moved.
Second.
Minutes approved. Next up, we have the 2023-24 school calendar on the agenda for approval to move to the board for a first reading.
I had one question. We always start school on a Monday, right? And we always had graduation on a Friday. So this year it looks like it's on a Wednesday. What does that mean?
Yep, super
Means we're getting
weird.
out earlier.
Yeah.
Brad, do you want to answer that question?
Sure,
or-
yeah, and
Okay.
since we're getting into it, Frank, can you put the calendar up and project it? You went right to it, Dr. John. Boom. So, all right, so this is the draft, the first draft for the board, 23-24 calendar for next year. And as Dr. John just stated, graduation is proposed to be on a Wednesday. With the current calendar draft we're looking at, and the way the times and where the dates work out, graduation does, the last student day falls on a Wednesday. So the thought process there is to have graduation on the last day of school. A lot of our surrounding districts do graduation on the last day of school. It's a natural thing to do for that. It also provides an opportunity to have a possible rain date on Thursday if the high school administration is interested in doing a rain date. When you have it on Friday, you're tied to a Saturday morning graduation or a inside graduation, and those two aren't the best situations, so it gives us flexibility. But really, the main point would be to have graduation on the last day of school. If you don't, and you push it to Friday, then you're looking at student last day being on Wednesday if we don't have any snow. So let's just hypothetically say that. And then teachers are here Thursday for a grades and records day. And then you have another day and you're kind of bringing everybody back. And we need the support of the staff. They really help make graduation what it is. So the high school folks that are involved with that, they're a huge piece to it. And thankfully, and we're grateful to have the high school staff be a part of that. So it flows nicely into Wednesday.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
And that was a conversation we had with the high school administration. I think they, and I believe, Mr. Bettman, didn't they share that information also with student leaders, student
Yes,
government
so
as
this,
well?
thank you, Dr. Stout. Got a little ahead of myself there. This calendar draft was vetted via the cabinet, the administration, REA. Mark and I had a conversation about the calendar. He had to take a look at it. Also, the principals and administration staff have taken a look at this, as well as the policy committee, a couple members of the policy committee.
So if there happens to be no snow, or if the snow days are needed, graduation typically does not move, correct?
Correct. Graduation would stay on that Wednesday. The fallback on that, or the negative piece to that, is that we would have a few days we wouldn't get reimbursed by the reimbursement for our seniors because they would be not in school during those days.
Okay, and then also, if there is no snow, then the teachers still have to come for professional development the Monday, and no?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the calendar reads for parents. So, yeah, so we really wanted the calendar to be very visual for the parents. And if the snow does not happen and we don't use those 2 snow days, that's at the end. Last day of school for students would be Wednesday, the 5th. Teachers' last day would be the 6th of Thursday for grades and records day.
Is there any, I haven't been here yet, so with people coming in from out of town and having relatives and such, does Wednesday make that more problematic?
Yeah, I mean, it could, but as Brad said, this would be published a year in advance, give folks plenty of time to know when it is, and a number of schools, most, try and schedule their graduation on the last scheduled student day and don't push it off till a Friday.
The other,
Okay.
sorry.
Have we ever utilized a rain date, or has that been something that we've ever discussed? I never heard of that.
We've had contingency plans starting last year with a rain date. So it was Friday last year, and if we would have had a rain date, we would have moved it to Saturday morning. I believe it was Saturday morning, and if it was raining again, then we would have moved indoors on Saturday.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
can definitely consider using those
Gives us
extra
more
days.
flexibility,
Okay.
yes.
Problem about Saturday evening is our graduation parties. Some of the seniors go away on vacation and take trips and things, so that was a Saturday morning. Yeah, this is nice because it gives us another day where you're kind of not butt up against the weekend.
I appreciate a calendar that does not allow or encourage continuing on into the next week. That was,
You know, like
you
a
know,
half day on a Monday?
didn't love the half day on a Monday. So I appreciate a calendar that ends on that Friday for students, no matter what. Can you help us understand the placement of or what the contractual requirements are for the 2 half-days for conferences? I know that the timing of them, the amount of time is within the REA contract, but the placement on the calendar, for instance, looking at how March works out this year, and having those 2 dates on the Wednesday and Thursday, 2 half-days on the Wednesday and Thursday, and then a day off for students and professional development day on the 8th. Basically creating then a very small week at the beginning of the month, then 2 weeks of school, and then 2 days, another 2-day week at the end of the month. Is there any shifting or any ability to move those 2 half-days to the Thursday and Friday and put that professional development onto our spring break? To elongate spring break and make more time in the classroom that first week of March?
So in theory, it's a good idea. The problem is that we do conferences at night, and we wouldn't be able to do Friday night conferences. So we stay until 8 o'clock for conferences. So if we moved to this, and if I'm hearing you correctly or not, let me know. But 7th and 8th would be conferences, and then the staff would be here till 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, and parents coming in for Friday evening conferences.
And I'm just wondering if parents would prefer that and having a longer break.
Or even if you don't move conferences, if that professional day just moved to the Monday or whatever of
The
the break,
Tuesday,
or whatever
right.
it is, instead of having it there.
All right, so the 8th, you're talking about March 8th?
Yeah, just so you don't have that day that's really short week and then having spring break in a couple more weeks,
Right.
you know.
I'm looking at a calendar, you know, when I look through March and April, you know, we have a shortened week that first full week of March. We have 2 full weeks, a shortened week the first week of April, shortened week the second week of April. That's a lot of shortened weeks. When, you know, is there any opportunity to move those professional development dates so they
Less disruptive.
you know, and giving parents a larger amount of time to take during spring break and not have this truncated 3 days off plus the random Monday post-Easter. And I also, I guess another question would be, I know that the April 1st, the Monday of Easter, is a federal holiday, but it's not necessarily, we're not required to give that day, correct? Like, we don't have to do, we can be in school on a federal holiday.
I don't know if that's one of the holidays in any of the contracts or agreements.
Right, Easter Monday is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Right. Might be for the 12-month employees.
Well, so
We'd have to double
on
check.
the Act 93, because I actually read that agreement today.
Yeah,
Spent a
we
lot
have
of
to
time
double
with that one
check.
today,
I
and
mean,
it
need to
does
double
list it
check.
as, it is a federal holiday, but it can be moved based on.
At the discretion.
At the discretion of the,
Now that's ringing a bell.
is what I read today in the Act 93 agreement.
Yeah, I think for the 12-month employees, there are 2 times during the year, Thanksgiving and around that spring break, where there are 4-day weekends.
I'll have to look at the Teamsters
For the
as well, that
12-month
contract.
employees, I think, because the district is closed for those
They would
days.
still technically have a 4-day weekend because we have off the Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, they don't right now.
Right.
So
They're not aligned. but-
Right, so the idea would be to shift
To
that
align
day.
them.
Right. And then that would give us a full week of spring break.
Are you suggesting also moving the day April 10?
Well, I think if we can move April 1
Oh, okay.
into
okay,
that
gotcha.
week, then keeping April 10 would
I
make
understand.
sense.
I understand.
Right. So. Yep.
We've been arguing for that day, that long day, those 2 long days, going back in for some of our people that couldn't.
Are you talking that Friday, the 8th?
The Friday after the 2 long conference days in the spring. Yeah, we have people that just won't make it here. I also have to put the conference days out to a vote to our people. Every year we vote on it, and I don't know that they would
wanna
vote
have a
for it
conference on a
after.
Friday.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to have it on a Friday. They would vote that down. And I don't know if you take away that in-service day after that, if they would vote in favor of that as well.
We moved that whole week into February?
But then that doesn't align with the end of the semester. That puts it ahead of this end of the semester, which I know is also. Right. Right. And I know that's a function of how this calendar shakes out this year. But we have been in this wonky, I feel like it's wonky. I feel like I question how many parents take that full week at Easter and anyway. And I hate for us to knowingly be in session during times when we know we have low enrollment or we have low attendance, if there are ways to better make the calendar to have high attendance or maximized attendance amongst our students. And when I look at this, I worry about that week of March 4th and the week of March 25th in terms of what attendance will look like and how much lost education time will be for some of our students. So.
Well, and to your point, the reason that exists is because Easter is not always consistent, and so this is when Easter is, so it's messing up March.
Yes. Right. But we also always have that short, and we don't have the full week for spring break. And I feel like, and I certainly don't know our attendance numbers, but anecdotally, it feels like we have a number of students or families who take that Monday, Tuesday, and it doesn't become worthwhile educational time.
I could try to capture the attendance, at least last year, for those 2 days prior to spring break. Going back, Rita, to your point about the first, and I would agree with Mark regarding the 6th and the 7th. You're thinking of taking that first and putting it on the 26th?
Well, then the issue with that becomes if we don't also find a way to get the 25th, and we're coming back for a Monday, which doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
In my dream scenario, the 8th goes to that 25th and makes a full week, but.
Yeah, that's a, it's.
And that may be a
it's-
question, Mark, to phrase it, if staff can have the full week, does that make a better voting situation than that Friday? Oh, no, they would still have to come in for the Monday for professional development,
professional
right?
development,
Okay. Yep, I'm trying. I'm hustling, sorry.
One would be just a PD day, and the other one would be a day off for everybody. Right.
So the calendar's staying,
I have one more question. Maybe nobody agrees with me here, but I feel like it's a really long break in October. I mean, a really long time of school in October. No break. There are no days off in October. I thought it was pretty nice this year to have one day every month for the students to have off, and then at least the staff not to have kids in the building one day at least a month. But that could be I might be the only one, so.
I think they need to be in school every day.
Yeah, and I don't know how you guys are, and this would be amenable to this. I could take it back to my leadership team if we would put that in-service day on the beginning of that week, and then that was a flex day where people could flex out doing in-service, then they could possibly get the whole week. People might be able to, they might like that better. I would put it out to my people and see what they would prefer. If you think that'd be a better schedule.
So do we want to just put a hold on this for adjustments before we, yeah, okay, all right. Sure.
Well, I'll just make a comment that I think every year it is helpful to get the input from people. Like, if somebody out there who's just on the phone or whatever has an opinion and they don't feel like saying it in front of a bunch of people, please email us, because it is helpful to have things pointed out to us that we may not have thought of or seen. And, you know, it happens every year with the calendar, and it's good to have the discussion.
Yep, that's fine.
I'll just add, when I was an assistant superintendent, I did what Brad did, and I was very glad to pass that off in my current role. Because it's a difficult decision, but I agree with Mrs. Munson that we do want input. Obviously, this is one we're not going to please everyone, and we try and apply the best logic that we can, but we appreciate the discussion around it.
All right, Brad, so we'll keep working on this. Great, thanks.
Yeah, we're actually ahead of schedule. This is typically done in January, so we are ahead of schedule with this.
Yep. Okay, moving right along. Graduation requirements. So if you recall, the board pulled this policy back from the last full board meeting to remove the physical education every year requirement, beginning with the class of 2025, to better meet the needs of students, which will allow for more flexibility when scheduling classes. However, Brad?
All right.
For policy 217, just have a quick question with what's being proposed on the agenda tonight. There seems to be some confusion between the draft and the final proposal. The final proposal seems to still list the must be taken every year requirement.
I'm not on my computer right now, so
I can show you, so do you want to see? It was only taken out on the bottom part under beginning.
Yeah, the
credit.
one above, it says physical education must be taken every year still.
beginning with the class of 2025. So that's the, right, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, you might be able to provide some input on this, but aren't we doing this based off of the class of 2025? So
That class will have the reduced credit.
right, okay, so the note, so you have total 24 credits, right? That first chart?
Right.
That we should strike that note as well?
Well, you're saying that's not going to happen until 2025, correct?
That was not
So
my
physical
understanding,
education
though.
must be taken every year until 2025, which would mean it would still need to be on there on the top chart and then not. So I don't know what, yeah.
Yeah, you could, it's that 2025 will have the reduced credit. So they can have that flexibility, now. It's just that beginning with 2025, you're going to have we're proposing that they have that reduced credit. So, but they could be taking them ahead now. They do that now. So you could remove it for your current classes now. It's just that the reduced
So
credit.
does the committee want to remove that language?
Yes.
for-
Yeah, I
Okay,
think-
so could we?
I think that was our assumption,
Yes,
that
could
we
we
were
take that
removing it in
off
both places.
for the current students, so we can, and then for the, yeah, so we'll just take that off everywhere.
And then it would be approved in November's
Yeah.
board meeting?
Yes.
Yep, so I'll make that note, I'll make that change.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to move it to the full board then with that amendment?
You'll do that as part of your committee.
Right, all together then.
Okay. Next, I'm just going to read through all the other policies that are on the list here and the changes and amendments that are being made to them. And then if there's any discussion at the end, we can go through that. So policy 311, reduction in staff. This was a policy where wording was added from the PSBA to include the guidelines for reducing staff due to a decrease in enrollment, consolidation, performance rating, and economic reasons while combining 311, 411, and 511. Policy 334, sick leave. This policy was updated using the PSBA's guidelines and language from policies 343 and 534. Language addressing medical documentation was revised for consistency with policy 314, which broadens the terminology beyond just a physician to include a licensed physician, certified registered nurse practitioner, or a licensed physician assistant. Policy 338, sabbatical leave. Revisions were made to this policy concerning sabbatical leave of absence for study and leave of absence for professional development to reflect more accurately professional employees' rights under the REA contract and school code. Policy 342 related to jury duty. There was some minor wording revisions with this policy. Same with policy 345, identification badges. The policy wording was changed to reflect district employees. Policy 709, building security. Policy 709 will be revised to change access control replacement costs to $5 to conform with policy 345. It's $5. Don't lose anything. Policies for deletion. The following policies are up for deletion. Policy 310, abolishing a position. PSBA has recommended deleting policy as language is in policy 311 now. Policy 410, PSBA is recommended deleting policy as language is in also policy 311 now. There was no policy 510 for classified employees. Policy 411, reduction in staff. Policies to be deleted as policy 311 was revised. Policy 434, sick leave. Policies to be deleted as policy 334 was revised. Policy 434A, use of sick leave days during disability. Deleting this policy as this is covered under the Family Medical Leave Act. Policy 438, sabbatical leave. This policy is to be deleted as policy 338 was revised. There was no policy 538 for classified employees. Policy 445, identification badges. This policy is to be deleted as policy 345 was revised. Policy 511, reduction in staff. This policy is to be deleted as policy 311 was revised. Policy 534, sick leave. This policy is to be deleted as policy 334 was revised. Policy 542, jury duty. This policy is to be deleted as language was moved to policy 342. There is no policy 442 for professional staff. Policy 545, again related to identification badges. This policy is to be deleted as policy 345 was revised. Regulations for deletion. Regulation 434A.1, use of sick leave days during disability. Deleting this regulation as this is currently covered under the Family Medical Leave Act. And Regulation 534.1, use of sick leave days during disability. We're deleting this regulation as this is also currently covered under the Family Medical Leave Act.
Well done. You got them all.
Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Please, no.
Sorry, just a small one. On the 311, it says there, the reducing staff through suspensions and then in parentheses furloughs. So is a suspension and a furlough, that's the same thing? Well, because it has in parentheses and then neither of those terms are actually defined. So I'm confused about that because I know we're basically, this policy is talking about if your enrollment goes down or you don't need someone or whatever, you can, I guess, suspend them is the right term now, not furlough. I'm confused about those terms. Because this apparently is not suspending employees because of performance issues or things like that.
Correct.
Just policy 311?
Yeah. And if that's correct, is there some other term that's used if an employee is removed from their position because of some infraction or something? Is that a different word that other than suspend?
Yeah, this is, the language is, like, the suspend language is coming from PSBA. That's, that's what they provide. We can make it what we want.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because typically when you think of suspensions, you think as punitive for something that someone has done, where a furlough it would be for enrollment
Right.
issues, or, but it is the language that we have from PSBA.
But then, so then,
It does kind of define it in the policy. It says suspensions and then comma, due to economic reasons or professional employees assigned to provide instruction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
where,
So,
well, yeah, I don't know where that is, but it does also say somewhere in here.
Page 3.
Wait a minute. That, gosh, this is too long, I can't find it now. There was something in here about that, there could be all kinds of reasons for a
Yeah,
suspension.
it looks to me like it's being used both in the context of the district needs to suspend a number of positions because of things that have nothing to do with the people in those positions, and also being used in the context of suspending a specific person because of their job performance. I agree, it does look like we've got those two
Those two things are
different
combined, are confused.
situations, both being used, the word suspended.
Brad, do we still have our solicitor review the HR policies? I think they do, correct?
Yeah, we could take a look at
So I
this.
think we could take a look
Yeah.
for a language clarification, just
Yeah,
to be
'cause if
sure. I'm
you-
sure it's school code, but we
I'm
could look
looking
at it.
at, performance evaluation rating. Professional employees shall be suspended within the area of certification required by law for the professional employee's current position in the following order based on the two most recent annual performance evaluations. So that one sounds like the suspension is definitely like a reaction to the person's performance. But the section before that talks about the board may suspend professional employees for economic reasons if all of the following apply. So there it has nothing to do with the teacher's performance. And that is, I think, very confusing to use the same word in both cases.
Well, I
We
mean,
can,
they're
yeah,
both stoppage of work. It's not about the reason, it's about stoppage of work. That is a
Right.
suspension by definition.
yeah, we can have our solicitor look at it, because it is a change in, school code used to be that it was based solely on seniority when we were looking at furloughing or a suspension in this case, but school code has changed, so now you look at the evaluation is the first factor that you look at, so I think it's trying to clarify that in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so it would still be a suspension due to economic hardship. So
Correct,
their
but this
role
is the
is-
order that
as far
you
as who
use.
is in the role, if you're choosing from multiple people in that
Correct.
same role.
Correct, because before it was just purely seniority, but now the evaluation is the first criteria.
Right, this policy isn't
Yeah.
changing the definition of furlough or suspension, it's changing the order in which it is applied.
Right, but I still think that it's just confusing because the word suspend, you think that means for some sort of infraction or whatever. And if that's the word they want, great, but just maybe it should be defined somehow. And then if, when we are talking about an infraction, maybe that should be some other word, but that's obviously not this policy, but somewhere else.
Right. If we were able to adopt the word furlough for the case where it's a board decision based on economic hardship, that would help clarify, right? So
Something like that.
Like if we're only using suspend in a case where it has to do with the employee's performance.
But definitely think
I
that you should
disagree.
make sure the
You
solicitor
disagree,
weighs
okay.
in on the right way to do it.
All right, so we'll hold off policy 311 until we can confirm that.
Sorry, I'm not even on the committee.
Could I add something to have him check out, the solicitor? First page, under guidelines at the bottom, it goes employees other than professional employees and temporary professional employees. Does that just mean non-professional employees?
Temporary professional employees, I believe it's in the until you receive tenure.
They're non-tenured,
You're
yeah.
not you're a temporary professional employee until you receive tenure, and then you become a professional employee.
But if you're other than that, you're just a non-professional employee. That could save us a lot of
You're-
ink.
Yeah.
And related to that, for professional employees and temporary professional employees, yes, they I think they have to be informed 60 days before the budget is, as far as, but for these non-professional, we can furlough them whenever we want to, because there's no date. It's not like we will give you a week's notice.
If they're non-tenured, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can just say tomorrow, hey, we got to pay a lot of, bills. You can't come in.
Yeah, they don't have the same seniority rights as tenured teachers.
Yeah, I know that, but.
Okay.
But that's kind of rude, is, like, tomorrow, don't come in because, we got to pay for a chiller.
And hopefully, we would not ever handle it that way.
Yeah, I understand
your
this is
point.
for like really severe economic issues, but I just want to point it out that, they deserve a little notice.
Is that something you'd want to have in the policy?
That's something I'd like opinions on.
Okay.
Where is the non-professional employee part in here? Is that actually
It's page 1, guidelines.
page
and-
1? All the way
Yeah,
up to page 1?
1 out of 5, on the very bottom.
So a temporary professional employee has
Whenever deemed
classrooms
necessary.
of
Yeah.
teachers, students. So
Yeah, I know
they
I know
wouldn't
them.
just say, we can't afford you anymore. We're going to combine
I
this
see what
third
you're
grade with
saying
all the
now.
other ones.
Yeah,
Were you saying like
I-
non-teachers?
I'm talking about like the
Right.
janitors
Non-teachers.
and the, custodial staff and
Right, the wording
electricians.
now is whenever deemed necessary, so it's not putting any notice in there.
Does that mean
So you're saying
administrators
it'd
are
be nice
non-professional?
to-
Does that mean clericals, non-professional? Who are those? Who are those people? Okay, what about like clerical? Are they non-professionals?
They have a contract.
Okay, yeah. So it's just who we're talking about? Who are these?
Drivers.
Bus drivers? Don't fire any bus drivers.
Well, we don't, they don't work for us, yeah. They're
Does this mean
contractors.
anybody?
Yeah, who is it? Does anyone
Who does
in
this
that
mean?
Category.
Custodians.
Just custodians? Is that? I don't know, I don't know who these people are.
Aides, instructional aides.
Where is,
I would hesitate to put any language like that would really limit our ability to act quickly to changing situations that we need to. So
Okay.
I think if we put something that's restrictive, I would rather have something less restrictive in
Okay.
the policy than that's more restrictive.
But could I find out who these people are at least at some point?
Yeah,
right,
because it
they would be
says
the
here-
at-will employees.
It says subject to limitations and procedures provided for in collective bargaining agreements. So all the Teamsters, they all have a bargaining.
They
so I
do.
don't
All
really
of the
know.
Teamsters have a collective bargaining agreement that protects their rights.
So does this apply to anybody?
Well, we have at-will employees who would
Okay.
be Act 93, confidentials, and we have project staff. So they would be employees that are not covered by collective bargaining agreement. But there are there are agreements in place that we would abide by.
Okay, so there's like 10 people.
Well, maybe more than that. No.
All right, well, Brad, we're going to hold off on 311 for now. We're going to hold off on the calendar. Other than that, do I have a motion to move the other policies to the full board?
Okay, so I hate to say this, but if we're not going to modify 311, a lot of those others were dependent on modifying 311.
511.
Yeah, because we had, so 511 is affected, 411, and, I'm sorry, there's no 411, it's 410, and 310 get affected. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I can hold off on any policies connected to 311 until we have language in there and with the suspension language change, so it differentiates between teachers or people that are suspended versus
Furloughed.
suspended based off of enrollment.
And maybe we won't change the language, but at least our solicitor
Sure, yep.
would weigh in on it.
Right.
But if this language came from PSBA, we might need to find out the reason for why are they using the word suspended now instead of furlough?
Right, and it could be a change in the school code, but
Right.
we'll definitely look into that.
So I guess for clarity's sake, we want 217 graduation requirements definitely to go to the full board and the calendar. We've got those
With the change.
with the change, right? Yep. But then 334, I don't think that one was dependent on 311, right? So I think 334
Sick leave, no.
and
We're good with that.
342,
Jury duty's good.
345, that one should be good.
That's good.
709 is good.
Yep.
But then not 310 and not 410, not 411.
411.
But yes, 434 and 434A and 438.
we're
And
go-
445, but not 511.
Not 511, correct.
So we're going to hold 310, 410, 311, and 511.
Correct.
410,
Yes.
Correct.
411, right? 411, too.
411 as well.
And 511.
Yep.
So Dan, you have to read them all again.
I think Dr. Stout already did. We're good. Okay, so with the exception of those policies there, is there a motion to move?
So moved, what I just said.
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Great. You good, Brad? Great, thanks. That's it.
Okay, well, dessert gave me indigestion. And that is our last thing. If there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.